A voice calls out Blair's name, urgently telling him to wake up. Laughter erupts throughout the classroom as students mock him for dozing off during lessons. A girl mentions that Brittany will call on him again. When Blair looks up, he sees his stern teacher standing before him, clearly displeased. She questions whether he's forgotten where he is. This woman is his formidable instructor, and she yanks his ear as punishment. She can't believe he fell asleep in her class and immediately demands that Blair solve math problem 15. The protagonist freezes, unsure how to respond. Placing his hand on his forehead, he claims he understands the problem. The teacher tells him he has until tomorrow to provide the answer as punishment for sleeping. The entire class continues laughing, convinced he'll never solve such a difficult equation. However, Blair appears surprisingly confident. The teacher notices his composure resembles that of a seasoned academic. To everyone's shock, the so-called failure proves himself a genius and answers correctly. Blushing in disbelief, the teacher stammers that this shouldn't be possible. Blair asks permission to use the restroom, and she grants it. The classroom buzzes with restless energy after this unexpected demonstration. Glancing at the board, students verify that his calculations are indeed correct. Everyone erupts in shock as Blair walks through the school corridors. In his thoughts, he reflects that this equation doesn't require progressive calculation, it's simply cross multiplication. Chen Lu is an ordinary teacher who believes wholeheartedly in mathematics. He worked diligently for years and was finally set to receive his senior professional title next year. But while taking an exam, he dozed off. When he woke, he found himself transported to another world. The protagonist declares this isn't scientific and mentally calls for Newton to help him make sense of it. Looking closely, he realizes he's now inhabiting the body of a boy notorious for being terrible at math. In this current world, mathematics holds tremendous value. He's impressed that students couldn't solve what he considers a simple problem and treated it as impossibly difficult. Blair admits he doesn't know how he arrived in this world, but seeing how everyone struggles with basic concepts, he might actually reach the top. He could achieve the pinnacle of life using mathematics. A girl with pink hair appears, and the two collide unexpectedly. Blair asks if she's all right, but they find themselves in a rather suspicious position. Noticing this, Blair immediately moves away. He quickly apologizes, explaining he wasn't paying attention. The blonde girl steps back, declaring it's him again. The protagonist realizes she recognizes him. Furious, she accuses Blair of bumping into her at the entrance ceremony and embarrassing her. She swears she'll never forget that incident. Now he's done it again, she claims, but this time deliberately and vulgarly. From Blair's expression, he's at a complete loss for words. Attempting to defuse the situation, the protagonist points out that she actually hit him first. Suddenly, the girl makes strange gestures with her hands. She appears to be reciting some kind of spell. Blair thinks she's lost her mind. He mimics her movements mockingly, treating it as a joke. A strange symbol materializes, and the girl's hand ignites with flames. She declares she'll come after Blair with everything she has. Judging by her expression, this won't end easily. The boy doesn't know what to do as she prepares to launch a fireball at his face. The girl yells that he should be ready for punishment. The protagonist has a brilliant idea before she can strike him down. He bows deeply and apologizes profusely for what happened. The blonde clearly didn't expect this reaction. Clenching her fist, she tells him not to think it's over just because of those apologies. But when she finishes her statement, Blair has already vanished. The protagonist runs as if his life depends on it. In his mind, nothing makes sense. Magic and science coexist in this world. Suddenly, a sharp pain hits his head, causing him to collapse. Fragments of Blair's memories flood through his consciousness. He sees himself crying, calling for his father. Someone announces that the general died honorably in battle. A hand presents a box, offering condolences. The scene shifts to a child standing with his mother before their house. People around them whisper that after the general's death, they became nothing but poor former nobles who must work for survival. Blair approaches his mother, telling her he got into college. She encourages him to study hard. In her thoughts, she notes how much her son resembles his father. An old man warns Blair to hurry if he can't keep up. He won't be able to stay there in the future. The boy promises he'll definitely come home. The protagonist now understands that the original owner of this body worked tirelessly despite having no talent for magic. He was constantly insulted by his classmates. Returning to the present, a friend calls out, asking if Blair is okay. He identifies her as Jasmine, wondering how she found him. Being very kind, she extends her hand to help him up. Blair thanks her, thinking to himself that the previous owner had a difficult life. From now on, it will be up to him to change that. In a classroom, the teacher lectures about the 4 types of magical elements. The bald instructor explains that this world divides people between ordinary individuals and those who can wield magic. Their school stands as the best and most prestigious among all institutions. Magic splits into 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. Through specific gestures, mages can channel spiritual energy to manifest these powers. After class ends, students happily prepare to leave. One boy appears somewhat dejected after hearing these lessons. Before departing, Blair calls out to his teacher. The instructor asks what the dear student wants. The protagonist inquires whether someone without talent can still use magic. Acting arrogant, the teacher mentions that Blair has asked this question many times. He walks away, declaring it's impossible to use magic without the necessary talent. People nearby mock him for being so serious yet possessing no ability. His friend arrives, telling Blair not to feel sad if he doesn't graduate. If that happens, he can work on his father's estate. In his memories, the protagonist recognizes this as Toby, Blair's best and only friend. The boy smiles, having driven away those who were bothering him. Toby announces he's leaving. Blair waves goodbye while Jasmine watches from a distance. Looking back, the protagonist asks if she has something to say. Acting very shy, the girl answers no. She runs off, mentioning that teacher Brittany is calling him to her office. Blair finds it strange how she's always sneaking around and watching him. He considers it ironic, having absurd knowledge of mathematics but zero talent for magic. He attempts to recite a fireball spell, but as expected, nothing happens. His expression shows disappointment. Then something appears, emanating a reddish aura. Hot flames emerge from his hand, spiraling around his arm. In his subconscious, Blair didn't expect this after all. Manifesting magic should be impossible without talent. Setting that aside, the protagonist begins playing with the fireball, fascinated. It's not every day someone travels to another world. He speculates that perhaps being a traveler means he was somehow enlightened. Then he remembers he needs to report to teacher Brittany's office. The sunset approaches as Blair knocks on the door, calling her name. When he enters, he apologizes for being late. For some reason, he blushes, and the cause becomes clear from one of the teacher's poses. The protagonist finds himself captivated by her. She smiles, telling him he finally arrived. Brittany asks him not to mind her unusual poses, then requests that Blair sit down. The woman explains she prepared hundreds of calculations for him to complete. She dumps all the papers on the table. Brittany says she'll leave and asks the boy not to rush. Almost instantly, the protagonist provides the answer to her question. At that moment, she questions whether that's even possible. She rushes toward Blair, exclaiming that she wouldn't have been able to solve it that quickly herself. The boy doesn't know what to say to the woman before him. Being friendly, Brittany asks if he can explain his solution method. Blair feels defeated by the power of her charm. In his thoughts, he notes his teacher seems more naive than usual. Slapping the table, Blair explains he performed the operation in sequence, but both the problem and statement were extremely prone to errors. Brittany insists there's only one solution and one method for this. He disagrees, explaining that for this particular problem, you simply need to find a pattern, sum all the penultimate numbers until they reach 80. Pointing to the board, the protagonist asks if she knows what sum of all penultimate numbers equals 80. Very excited, she raises her hand and answers 39. Blair confirms she's correct, then asks her to sit down. He explains that what was once a tedious addition problem has become a simple multiplication task. With this kind of method, numerous problems can be solved easily. Brittany asks how there can be such an intelligent approach. She adds that this solution can be more generalized if you sum all numbers within a constant period. The formula becomes remarkably simple. Through various calculations, the teacher's mind drifts into another realm. Blair snaps her back to attention, asking if everyone in this world is this inexperienced. She responds with another question, asking if this is truly the solution. Smiling, Blair confirms it's easier to calculate this way, and everyone should be able to do it too. Taking the boy's hand, the woman declares he's a genius. She insists that if he continues studying, his future will be unlimited. Brittany doesn't realize she's emanating a terrifying force that overwhelms the protagonist. Stepping back, she apologizes for getting overly excited. She asks if Blair wants to become a great mathematician. He says no, adding that he wants to become a great magician instead. Hearing this response, the teacher becomes visibly sad. Brittany passionately argues that he received intelligence gifted by the gods and shouldn't waste it. As far as she knows, he has no talent for magic. No matter how he looks at it, the answer to everything lies in mathematics. Blair immediately pushes her away, declaring that regardless of what she says, he will indeed become a magician. In his mind, he admits that throwing around some advanced equations could make him a celebrated mathematician. However, those are merely works from another world. From his perspective, magic proves far more attractive than any equation or square root. Brittany proposes a bet. In a few days, there will be a magic test in the classroom, and this test will determine Blair's future at the academy. Blair acknowledges he already knows about it. The woman explains that if he truly wants to be a magician, he must pass this test. She frames it as a game. If Blair fails, she'll do something to keep him at school, but he'll have to become a mathematician instead. However, if he manages to pass, Brittany will stop insisting. She asks what he thinks. In her mind, she considers this a lost game for someone with no talent. Nevertheless, the protagonist accepts the challenge. Leaving the office, Blair mutters that his teacher is incredibly persistent. He recalls what she said about not forgetting their agreement. He stops dwelling on it and refocuses his mind on studying magic. Turning to the side, he spots the fire girl. As if by destiny, the two collide again. Before falling, Blair notes this feeling seems familiar. When he looks up and sees who it is, shock hits him. The girl lunges at him, ready to kill. She immediately recites the fire spell. A ball of flame appears in her hand, but glancing ahead, the protagonist has already disappeared. He remarks that if he'd stayed, he would have been burned alive. Brittany asks why Isabel seems so unhappy since arriving. The girl immediately responds that she encountered a pervert at school and vows that next time, she'll definitely burn him alive. Isabel throws papers on the table, announcing she's already solved the problems. She's pleased it only took her half an hour. Brittany acknowledges that Isabel is almost faster than her, but mentions Blair took only 1 minute. Isabel can't find words, thinking it's impossible. She wonders who this boy is. Her teacher explains he used a solution method never seen before. Brittany describes what the protagonist taught her, a very intelligent way to solve problems. Excited, Isabel asks her teacher to introduce her to Blair. Brittany notices the girl's enthusiasm and agrees to make the introduction. Moments later, Isabel kicks open the classroom door, demanding to know who Blair is. Toby immediately suspects his friend is in trouble. Someone pinches him from under the table. It's Blair, asking him to stay quiet. Toby tells Isabel that the protagonist left the room. Naturally, Isabel suspects the situation. Leaving, she instructs that when he arrives, they should tell him she wants to talk. The protagonist's friend appears nervous, but promises he'll pass along the message. The girl slams the door and departs. Blair emerges from under the table. Everyone remains in profound silence. The boy doesn't look well after facing this ordeal. Toby asks what on earth the protagonist did. Blair is deeply confused because he genuinely doesn't know who she is. His friend says he really seems like a robot who only knows how to study and work. Toby explains that Isabel has many followers at the academy, and if those guys discover Blair offended her, things won't end well. Blair counters that the academy has rules they can't do whatever they want. Toby asks if the boy knows where the school is located. Blair doesn't know how to respond, so he guesses something like the Sea of Apollo. His friend tells him not to be so foolish. Isabel's father is the Lord of Apollo City. Blair asks if there's still time to apologize. Someone in the background shouts about the protagonist touching Isabel. The bully declares he won't do anything since Blair will be expelled after failing the test. Toby notices the guy wants to start a fight. The bully explains that simply having good grades allows students to remain at the academy. However, after graduation, knowing magic becomes essential. Therefore, all second-year students must take a test, and failure means immediate expulsion. For normal students, this test is like a walk in the park. But for Blair, who has no talent, it changes everything. In his mind, the protagonist understands why teacher Brittany chose this specific test for their agreement. To gain attention, the bully slams the table. He asks if Blair didn't hear what he said, adding that the boy is just a bastard orphan. After this insult, Toby stands up from his chair. He asks if the bully wants to fight. Arrogantly, the bully says it's none of his business. Toby declares that the protagonist is his friend, and it's his duty to protect him. The bully grows angry, warning he'll remember this. Leaving, he promises that next time, he'll settle this score. In his mind, the protagonist acknowledges that this chubby guy might not seem reliable, but in critical moments, he proves very loyal. Confidently, Blair asks if Isabel came to bother him. Would Toby do the same? Toby admits that if the girl asked him to hit the protagonist, he'd do it instantly. These words leave Blair feeling desolate. The day of the test arrives. The teacher explains that the magic everyone will demonstrate is the fireball, adding that this is basic, so most should pass. In this test, students must recite the spell and hit the target. The teacher calls on the bully to start. The guy recites the incantation, then hurls the fireball, striking the target and earning 8 points. The teacher calls for the next person. The bully spots Blair in the crowd and tells him to enjoy his last moment at the academy. Toby tells the bully to shut up. The next participant is the chubby friend. He recites the spell just like the bully. A small fireball appears, and he struggles to maintain it. Toby throws it toward the target. A tiny spark reaches it, and the teacher declares it counts. Naturally, the boy feels happy about that. The teacher glances at the protagonist's document and already knows he has no talent for magic. He sighs, calling Blair a foolish child. The teacher was about to announce that everyone passed, but the bully interrupts with a comment. He points out that one person is still missing. Student Blair hasn't taken the test yet. Blair remains silent. The teacher asks if he'll take the test. At that moment, everyone laughs, insisting it's impossible since he can't even perform the basics. They mock him as Blair the magical idiot. Toby approaches, saying it's obvious they planned this. Against all odds, the protagonist declares he will take the test. No one understands his decision, but naturally, they mock it relentlessly. A girl sneers that Blair still doesn't realize he's magically worthless. The teacher tells everyone to be quiet, then asks again if the boy will take the test. Blair confirms he will and says he can start now. Standing directly before the target, he knows he can perform magic without reciting, but he'll still pretend. The protagonist begins chanting the spell, then commands the fireball to manifest. Everyone shields their eyes, expecting something to emerge, but no magic appears. Students immediately start laughing and mocking the boy. However, that lasts only moments before his fury ignites. A massive fire magic becomes visible to the naked eye. The target is completely obliterated. Everyone is terrified by this display, while Brittany looks on sadly, realizing Blair does possess talent. Ashes spread across the grass as the teacher announces that Blair passed the test. The bully insists that's impossible. Toby excitedly declares he knew his friend was amazing. The teacher asks Blair to come with him. In her mind, Brittany wonders how Blair accomplished that. The lie Blair tells to avoid detection is that he practiced every day, and suddenly it worked. The teacher explains that magic is gifted by the gods, and those who can't manifest it are called forsaken by the divine. People lacking talent are extremely rare, and someone who previously had none but now does is almost a miracle. Regardless, he acknowledges that Blair has tremendous potential to become a mage. In his thoughts, Blair notes that last time, someone tried persuading him to become a mathematician. Now it's about magic. The teacher explains that the protagonist has worked hard during this period and will certainly reach the level of a Saint Mage. Blair realizes that the Saint Mage level is the highest one can achieve. There's a legend of someone who reached this pinnacle, whose main powers allowed them to tear the fabric of space and time. The boy starts considering what he could accomplish if he reaches that maximum level. Shortly after, Blair looks at the teacher and promises he'll certainly become a Saint Mage. Elsewhere, the protagonist mentions that the academy granted a few days off because of the test. Using this short period, he studied magic books to the maximum. He discovered that mage levels are divided into 7 tiers, with the Saint Mage representing the pinnacle. Their powerful magic is described only in books. Accounts claim a Saint Mage can tear the fabric of space-time and travel between different worlds and dimensions. However, the current world dismisses this as nonsense. Blair thinks about how he ended up in this place and suspects this phenomenon might be connected. Unfortunately, his teacher doesn't believe in spatial magic, so he couldn't obtain more information. Someone arrives and asks if Blair is still reading. The protagonist identifies this person as the administrator. He asserts he'll continue reading the next day. Blair stayed up all night studying. He opens the classroom door to find a crowd already formed. Everyone gossips about the recent event Blair's magic being remarkably powerful. Other students suggest he was simply hiding his strength. Girls comment that if you pay attention, the boy is actually quite handsome. Before him, Isabel sits in a rather suspicious position. Naturally, he wonders why she's there. Blair covers his eyes, claiming he cannot see. Isabel says it's unexpected that he's the person Brittany mentioned. Blair tries to explain it's all a misunderstanding. She yells, calling him a pervert. Her fury overflows into magical form. She begins reciting a fireball spell. The boy attempts to defend himself somehow, but quickly realizes nothing hit him. Fortunately, his teacher arrived just in time, stopping Isabel from doing something harmful. Brittany declares it's forbidden to use magic inside the classroom unless permitted by a superior. The girl asks her to listen, but Brittany tells Isabel to be quiet. Then the teacher mentions she was looking for him and instructs him to go to her office. She adds that Isabel should accompany them too. Blair feels somewhat proud, though he remains a miserable yet clever boy. The three leave, and soon the door closes. The bully stays confused, asking what just happened. Inside the teacher's office, Blair sincerely apologizes for his actions, adding that everything was a misunderstanding. Brittany says the boy was careless and asks Isabel not to be bothered. Still acting arrogant, she accepts the apology. Appearing somewhat sad, the teacher tells Blair that his magical power exceeds her understanding. As promised, she won't persuade him anymore. However, she asks how he managed to do it and if he could teach her. Blair explains it just happened, then mentions he has a question about magic. Being savvy, she says she won't force him to answer and adds that the protagonist can ask anything. Blair inquires whether one must use gestures and recite spells to invoke magic. Isabel declares that question is extremely stupid, even a child knows that. Nevertheless, the protagonist continues, asking if all mages function the same way. Brittany explains that regardless of level, invoking magic requires gestures and recitation. The only beings who don't need that are the gods. Isabel comments that her teacher doesn't need to answer such a ridiculous question with such seriousness. Blair notes that he's different, perhaps he can do this because he's not from this world. Brittany continues explaining that this is common sense. If Blair wants to become a great mage, he must memorize theory books thoroughly. However, that's not why she called him to her office. His teacher holds a type of paper, and Blair is confused because he doesn't recognize it. Isabel identifies this as a journal where the kingdom's most important academic works are published. Suddenly, the girl is startled by something she sees. She notices that both her teacher's and Blair's names appear in the journal. Brittany explains she submitted the formulas she learned from the protagonist. Blair doesn't care much about this since he earns little money working in the library. As far as he knows, you can't eat paper. His teacher says she almost forgot something. She hands over a bag full of coins, explaining this is a bonus for the manuscript. Naturally, the protagonist is thrilled he earns 2 silver coins monthly, and in one day, he received more than 50, all thanks to his wonderful teacher. Innocently, Brittany mentions she'll take half since she also contributed. Now Blair will receive only 25 silver coins. In his mind, he calls her a cunning snake. Regardless, it's still a good amount. Whether he likes it or not, Blair has an idea to make substantial money. Looking at his teacher, the boy asks if there's always a bonus of 50 coins for each published work. The woman admits she didn't pay much attention to that detail, but perhaps it's normal since the journal is famous. Being very clever, Blair mentions he's been developing a good thought lately. He continues, saying he thought of solving formulas in a unified way. Brittany realizes something incredible is unfolding before her. She adds that this might solve the mystery of Ross. Blair doesn't know who this person is. His teacher explains it's a mathematical problem posed by the great mathematician Ross. She performs the calculation, then explains that in Ross's problem, there are 7 cats, 7 wives, and 7 bags. Blair declares the solution is easy if you want to simplify it, just use the unified formula. Hearing this, Brittany becomes ecstatic that this great mathematical problem can be solved so simply. In his thoughts, he acknowledges he still has some preliminary ideas. His teacher calls him to help solve the problem. Time passes quickly while the two study. Isabel ends up falling asleep. A noise wakes her. She awakens to her teacher shouting that this is incredible. Brittany proclaims that the protagonist truly has great talent for mathematics. Isabel approaches, admitting she didn't know the boy was all that. She asks if everything came from his head. He grows serious, asking if she really wants to know. Blushing, she insists Blair can't keep telling lies. The protagonist explains he simply spends considerable time with math while others sleep. The girl becomes embarrassed, asking what he's talking about. Another day arrives. Isabel thinks about Blair. Before her, she sees him acting suspiciously. This is the second-year building, and the protagonist is in first year, so she wonders if he'll harass the seniors. This time, she'll follow him to see what he's up to. While observing, Blair has already disappeared. The scene shows the protagonist standing before a large wall. Earlier, Toby had mentioned this wall connects the second and third year buildings. Performing several flips, Blair notes his teacher is right. She said he could go to the city to find a high-level mage to teach him outside the academy. The boy finds everything fascinating because the city bustles with all kinds of people walking around. He remarks this place is very prosperous. Before him stands the Magic Association building, apparently huge and majestic. He takes a mask from his pocket and places it on his face, declaring it's better not to reveal his identity. Entering the place, it seems somewhat crowded. Seeing the receptionist up close, she's his friend, but she doesn't recognize him because of the mask. She asks if the protagonist wants to hire a magic consultant. Blair confirms he does. In his mind, he notes the girl must be working part-time. Jasmine explains the consultant fees range from 15 gold coins to 2. Hearing that amount, he can't handle it. The sum is absurd. 100 silver coins equal 1 gold coin. He apologizes for the inconvenience. However, she runs after him. Jasmine mentions that if money is a problem, Blair can obtain a library loan card. Hearing this, the boy is surprised. The girl explains the institution has a large library. It may not be as effective as an instructor, but it's better than nothing. Blair says he'll make the card. Jasmine then asks for his credentials. Naturally, this shakes him before this moment. He didn't even know his own name, let alone where important documents are. The girl mentions she thought he was already a mage. He still has the option to borrow credentials or get certification, which is easier. You simply need to cast a spell corresponding to the element of the mage certifying you. Blair asks if he can get certification here. She confirms he can, but doesn't recommend doing it today because the certifier this time is very strict. Ignoring everything, the protagonist declares he'll do it today. 2 men appear. Jasmine announces that Blair wants the certificate. They sit down, and the bald man questions why Blair wears a mask. Hiding the reason, the boy lies about his name, claiming he was practicing the fireball spell and ended up burning his face. The old man remarks that burning yourself with a basic spell is uncommon. Arrogantly, the bald man declares Blair will be a junior mage only in his next life. Jasmine asks everyone to head to the testing area. However, the man refuses, saying there's no need. He adds that Blair can use his fire magic to attack him directly. This scares the boy. He didn't expect it to unfold like this. He knows the power of his attack. Speaking directly, the old man asks if Blair thinks his little fireball can hurt Andre. The protagonist tries not to insist much. Around him, fire magic spreads through the room. Seeing this, Andre tells the old man that this year, there's no one decent. Naturally, the spell isn't finished. As the protagonist continues gathering all his mana, everyone realizes this will be extremely dangerous. The bald man had asked Blair to attack him, and the boy strictly obeys. The gigantic sphere, more resembling the sun, heads toward Andre. His only reaction is to await the terrible silence of imminent death. An explosion occurs, and a beam of light blinds everyone around. After the attack, smoke rises. Jasmine coughs. Before her, the smoke dissipates, revealing the old man. When he sensed the incoming danger, he raised a barrier that withstood the fireball well, thus saving Andre from becoming barbecue. Desperate, Andre has no reaction and remains on the ground. His face shows pure terror, a synonym of hopelessness. Jasmine is astonished by the destructive power. Meanwhile, Blair apologizes because he thought they were ready, so he decided to use a bit more force. After all this, Jasmine hands him the certification and library card. The protagonist feels excited because he can finally study. Very enthusiastic, the girl says she's never seen anything like that. She adds that she's sure Blair will become a great mage in the future. He thanks her. She mentions she'll wait for him until next time. However, Jasmine notices something. How did the boy know her name? In the library, Blair didn't expect there to be so many people sitting and examining various books. He remarks this is strange, as the girl had said. The books in this library are more comprehensive and in-depth, especially regarding magical spiritual power. He learns that spiritual power defines a mage's magic strength, besides their elemental affinity. High-level mages have an immeasurable advantage over weaker ones. However, the theory of the 4 elements described in the books is an absurd oversimplification given this world's limited mathematical knowledge. People believe the 4 elements form the foundation not only of magic, but of the entire world. All other elements are derivatives of the 4 main ones, the same principle as primary colors. Going deeper into the subject, Blair notices several different concepts. For instance, the existence of magic in this world has no scientific explanation. The protagonist thinks of something brilliant about elemental communications. He abruptly gets up from the chair, a big smile on his face. He declares that if everything goes well, he can create new magic. Then he grabs the library card enthusiastically. He runs out, announcing he'll make a great discovery, so he'll return to the academy and test whether it works. In the background, we see Jasmine, the old man, and Andre. They're having coffee. As always, the bald man continues to belittle Blair, but admits the fireball's power was immeasurable. Stroking his beard, the old man notes it was strange because he had no control over the protagonist's magic. It felt like something entirely different from this reality. Surely, there's something about this boy they won't be able to understand. Night falls, and the protagonist is jumping over the academy wall. His movements are simple and quick. Landing on the ground after leaping onto the grass, he says that since no one is around, he'll test his theory right away. Calmly and lightly, Blair closes his eyes. He takes a deep breath to feel the energy of the environment. At that same moment, he senses something coming. He notices he can actually control the entire flow. The boy announces he'll now try to sense the second most abundant element in the atmosphere. Gathering energy in his palm, this is oxygen. Observing it, the protagonist can't say if it's pure oxygen. Concentrating as much as he can, he manages to do something impressive, mixing the power of fire with oxygen. He discovers this is 100% real. However, the spark that was igniting suddenly goes out, causing great disappointment. Still, with eyes full of determination, Blair tries again to control both elements as one. Lightning and wind succumb to everything. Meanwhile, the protagonist exists within the vortex of fire and oxygen. The entire academy trembles, and everything starts cracking and breaking. The teacher feels the tremor and asks what it is. Looking out the window, she notices something like a great explosion. Almost the entire forest has been set on fire. The good news is that Blair is alive and well. Incredibly, the magic remains so powerful that it still surrounds him. Fortunately, the boy managed to stop in time. The dense fog hovering over the area dissipates, and the protagonist notices something. The ground was completely shattered and combusted. It turns out the oxygen was much purer than he thought. After hearing the explosion, people start appearing. Blair realizes it wasn't supposed to cause such a commotion. Running through the forest, the boy acknowledges the explosion might have been large, but it created something significantly substantial. The next day in the classroom, the protagonist studies as usual. He ended up falling asleep due to the eventful night. A hand hovers over his shoulder. It's Toby, asking if Blair knows what happened last night. Lying blatantly, he responds that he doesn't know because he was sleeping. Toby explains that an explosion occurred, and now the school is under investigation. There are suspicions of seniors casting spells. Given the size of the crater, it was at least a high-level mage. The chubby boy starts thinking about the most suspicious people, then mentions that teacher Brittany is a high-level mage. After this statement, Blair becomes alert for some reason. He goes to her office and knocks on the door. She opens it, happy that Blair came by because she really needed him. Holding a paper in her hand, she announces that the Mathematical Society posted something about the solution to Ross's problem. Since it was the protagonist who solved it, his name is listed as the author. She congratulates him on solving one of the greatest mathematical problems. Interrupting this topic, Blair declares there are more important matters to address. He shouts that he wants to study mathematics with her. The woman doesn't understand this sudden decision. Brittany asks what happened to the story of becoming a great mage. The boy says he'll be both. Suddenly, she grabs his arm, then declares she's happy Blair thinks that way. She tells him to come to her office every night to study mathematics. The protagonist feels emotional with all this enthusiasm that resembles a volcano erupting. Brittany says that with the boy's talent, he'll surely become a great mathematician. Stepping away from her, Blair mentions he has a magic question and asks if she can answer it. The conversation was brief. The woman agreed to help and answer questions whenever he wanted. The protagonist opens the door to leave. His teacher reminds him to come by the next night. As the boy is about to close the door, Brittany tells him to wait. She falls silent, making the atmosphere tense. Blair grows scared, asking what she wanted. She doesn't respond or say anything initially, but then asks if the boy is taking advantage of her to get answers to various magic questions. She looks intently at the protagonist. Sweating heavily, Blair realizes he's been found out. With flowers around him, he tells a half-truth that he just wants to spend more time with her. Brittany approaches him. Naturally, the protagonist thinks he's going to die. Being very sweet, she asks the boy to be careful when leaving and reminds him to come by at night after class. Practically, Blair feels like he's been expelled from there. In his subconscious, the protagonist doesn't know if she's foolish or intelligent. Later that night, the boy arrives and opens the office door. Brittany sits with Isabel. Suspicious, the girl looks at him and asks what he's doing there. The woman apologizes to Isabel because she forgot to mention that starting today, Blair will be studying with them. Since Isabel is his senior, she must take care of and help him when needed. She then asks Blair to sit next to Isabel, as she has a question she'd like him to answer. A large stone is thrown into a well, followed by another stone with double the mass. She asks which stone will reach the bottom first. Isabel says she just needs to calculate the time. However, Blair explains that the larger stone will never catch up with the smaller one. Ignoring air resistance, the smaller stone would arrive first. After hearing this response, the girl becomes annoyed. She then declares that Blair has good knowledge but lacks common sense. Brittany admits she didn't understand what the protagonist said. The wise ones have stated that the object with greater mass will fall first. For some reason, the girl continues to argue, insisting that even a child knows this. Naturally, after these statements, Blair grows somewhat angry. He questions if she has confirmed this. Isabel says they cannot doubt the great sages. The teacher simply observes the confrontation between the two. Quickly and directly, the boy declares that for something to be true, it must be proven. She retorts, asking if he wants to bet to see if it's true. Brittany tells them both to stop. However, Isabel announces she bets 10 gold coins. At that moment, the protagonist becomes excited. The three go outside the academy to an open field to conduct the test. Holding the stones, the teacher asks Blair to think it over because 10 gold coins is no small amount. Apparently without remorse, the boy tells her to continue. Beside him, Isabel declares this will be the easiest victory of her life. Looking at the girl, Brittany notes that confidence is good, but arrogance can lead to a point of no return. A strong wind blows over everyone present. Then the teacher starts to float. After witnessing this, the boy is impressed. Seeing Blair's surprise, she mocks him, calling him a commoner for finding this so interesting. The teacher is now high enough to drop the stones. With a serious look, Brittany prepares to start the test. Meanwhile, Isabel continues arrogantly, expressing certainty that Blair will lose. The stones are released and fall quickly. For a moment, the two seem to travel at the same speed. Then they land almost simultaneously. With a surprised look, Isabel can't find words. Excited, Blair already knows he's won the bet. After this, the woman descends to check. Her landing is long and smooth. The girl shouts that this is totally impossible. Both look at the result in surprise. Brittany asks how on earth the protagonist knew that. He says he saw it in a book and then tried it. Thousands of years have passed, and humanity was believing a great lie. All the errors and common assumptions were unveiled by Blair, and that's certainly not luck. She tells the boy that the law of falling objects has completely changed after this test. Naturally, Blair isn't too impressed since this is basic knowledge in his world. His teacher repeats that Blair is a genius. Beside him, Isabel seethes with rage. Looking at the girl, Brittany asks her to help update the law of falling objects. With a serious expression, the protagonist says he'll need Isabel's help. For a moment, the girl thinks about all this. In her mind, she envisions both of them in newspapers with the title, "The Emergence of Two Geniuses." Naturally, this would shock the industry, and her reputation would rise. She pouts but soon accepts. The girl imagines herself and Blair the two happy together, discovering new things about mathematics. Maybe when they get married, her name would be Blair Isabel. Her blushing face can be seen from afar. Elegantly, she tells the protagonist that if he gets into trouble, he can call her, and she'll surely solve everything. Blair extends his hand to the girl. Things in her brain become totally confused. Being very cute, she asks why he's extending his hand. Blair says he wants the bet money after all. Gold coins are never too much. Isabel runs away crying, telling him to put crap in his head. A few hours later, she gives him the coins. In his subconscious, Blair notes he got rich just by making a bet with the arrogant, spoiled girl. Approaching, Isabel remarks that he doesn't care about fame or honor, but apparently likes money. For a few seconds, the protagonist remains silent. Meanwhile, the girl asks what Blair wants. The beautiful blue sky covers the entire world. The leaves sway in the wind that incessantly continues to wander. Memories of his fake past life surface hours working and teaching. Still, he was always happy with his students. The boy asks what she's talking about. Standing up, Blair simply says he wants money to improve his life, nothing more, nothing less. Leaving, he bids farewell to Isabel and Brittany. The two beauties watch the boy walk away. The next day, Blair is almost asleep at his desk. Nevertheless, he's happy because now he has money. Maybe he should even move to a new house in the future. Someone arrives, the bully calling the boy's attention. He says his senior is looking for him and immediately tells the trash to get up. Blair doesn't understand anything and just remains still. Grabbing his wrist, the bully tells him to lower his head because casting a fireball means nothing. A voice resounds, telling the bully to let Blair go. The student this time is Senior Phage, basic attributes and common appearance, but he apparently has two bodyguards. Looking back, the protagonist doesn't know who this guy is. Phage approaches, asking if he is Blair. For a brief moment, the guy stares at him. Blair ignores him and asks if the bully didn't hear the senior telling him to let go. After releasing him, the protagonist questions what's happening. The guy tells Blair to stay away from Isabel from now on because someone like him shouldn't be getting close or even talking casually. Everyone leaves, and the protagonist just watches. Phage ends up bumping into Toby. He doesn't apologize, and the chubby boy remains on the ground. Getting up, he goes to Blair and asks if he's okay. Simply, Blair explains that the senior just came to exchange some words. Toby seems afraid of the guy. He says everyone at the academy fears him, and Blair is the only one who doesn't care. The boy is the son of the great Viscount and the youngest heir of the Howard family. He adds that if someone offends him, they'll have a hard time living at the academy. Placing a hand on Blair's shoulder, Toby says he knows the protagonist is infatuated with Isabel's beauty. However, he advises him to follow Phage's orders. Sometime later, we see the bright sun shining over the academy. Inside the office, Blair is thinking about his pure oxygen sphere that cannot be launched immediately because it needs time to concentrate. At the moment, his biggest advantage is not needing to recite or make any gestures. He soon wonders if he can use multiple elements at once. However, Isabel interrupts, saying he needs to study more on the subject that teacher Brittany assigned. Handing over a paper, Blair yawns. It shows he's already written everything. The girl is impressed with such speed. Very calmly, the protagonist explains he just needs to use different methods to solve each calculation. In other words, find the most ingenious solution possible. Isabel listens to every detail to learn more. The boy stands up, asking her something: how many fireballs can she summon at once? The girl responds that at most 9. By Blair's face, this is totally absurd. Teasing the boy, Isabel says she knows he can only launch one at a time. Retorting, the protagonist mentions he didn't find anything about summoning more than one magic in the books. The girl explains that books present basic theories and not specific techniques. She adds that she only learned to launch multiple at once because her father hired a consultant. However, if someone is willing to call her big sister, Maybe she can teach. Without hesitation, Blair calls her big sister. The response was so quick that even Isabel didn't expect it. She calls him a thick-skinned pervert. Getting up from the chair, she asks Blair to follow her because she's going to show him how it's done. Outside the school, the two find themselves in a small field. Isabel casts the multiple fireball spell. In total, only 9 appear. After seeing this, the boy is impressed with such skill. Besides the ability to keep them all stable, the girl explains that many mages think they only need to keep magical spirit in one place. Actually, you can summon and manipulate them however you want, depending on skill and experience. Concentrating, you can launch them at a single target at once. Blair asks if it's possible to control them all in different ways. Isabel explains that would be like drawing a circle with your right hand and a square with your left. The two laugh cheerfully as the conversation flows. Meanwhile, in a stalker's head, he thinks they're dating. Full of rage, he breaks the wall with a squeeze of his hand. This is Phage, furious after the protagonist ignored his warning. He declares that Blair will pay for all of this. Sometime later, Blair is training based on what Isabel said, dividing his mind into 9 independent parts. The girl tells him to do it gradually, not all at once. It's fine if Blair can't do it since it took her over 6 months. The sphere in the boy's hand shines, releasing several sparks. Suddenly, multiple fireballs are summoned. She then screams, asking how Blair did that. Raising his hand, the boy says he did it using her method. For some reason, Isabel complains while the protagonist doesn't understand. He says he just followed what the girl instructed. In her mind, Isabel notes this pervert is not just a genius in mathematics, but also in magic. A person once considered abandoned by the gods is now literally gifted and blessed. She then shouts, saying the protagonist took too long. She runs off, telling him not to look for her if he needs help with magic. Placing his hand on his face, Blair doesn't understand what he did wrong. He thinks it's hard to understand women. Touching his pocket, he feels something strange. At that moment, Isabel is running, calling him a pervert with all her might. Blair suddenly grabs her hand. This startles her, making her extremely alert. She questions why he's pulling her. Looking at the palm of the boy's hand, there's something like a teddy bear bracelet. Being polite and elegant, Blair calls his dear Isabel and says he could only learn something thanks to her careful training. He then asks her to accept this gift as a token from her little brother. Her eyes light up when she sees it's something so cute given from the heart. This makes the girl blush with his gesture. In her mind, she admits this pervert is good. Quickly, she takes the bracelet from his hand, then runs off, calling the bracelet ugly. However, she ends up falling awkwardly on the ground. Even so, she gets up and looks back. Her gaze indicates uncertainty, but also pure consideration. The boy wonders if he should comfort her. In any case, she continues running away, saying she'll never forgive him. Blair is lost in thought, noting that bracelet cost 50 silver coins. He was going to give it to his teacher, but changed his mind and gave it to Isabel. Suddenly, Blair notices something. The people in question are Phage's henchmen. The bald one says he remembers the senior warned him about getting close to the girl. Even so, he continued to meet her. Blair gets up from the tall grass but is surrounded by the guys. Before anything happens, it's better to run than stay and die. The fools chase after him, telling the boy to stop. In his subconscious, he notes this group of people is a problem. The bully shouts that Blair is like his father fleeing the battlefield and still getting killed. After hearing this, the boy stops. The guy asks if he hit a sore spot, then runs to attack him. When his punch is about to land, the protagonist's hand burns, almost turning to ashes. With several fireballs in hand, the boy looks at everyone. The bully is severely injured because of Blair. The protagonist declares that his father was a man who died fighting for this country, not just his father, but also a great hero. He then tells the bully not to insult him. The guys behind are scared after seeing the protagonist create 9 fireballs. They run, leaving their accomplice behind. Like a superior being, Blair stands above the bully, screaming. The bully asks the protagonist not to approach because the academy restricts fights between students. Backing away, he tells Blair not to be impulsive. With an angry look, the boy says he should have said that earlier. When he moves to attack, he notices something people are behind him. The boy screams for help, thinking he's about to die. However, looking ahead, he sees the protagonist fallen. He pokes Blair to see if he's dead. Without wasting time, he runs, leaving everyone behind. Brittany tells the bully to stop running. At the same moment, he insists he didn't do anything and asks her to believe him because the protagonist fell on his own. Affectionately, she makes the boy see the skies. Blair is already red as he witnesses true paradise. In a panic, the bully asks the teacher to listen to his explanation. Next to him, someone yells about the situation. Then he questions if the boy thinks they're blind and didn't see Blair fall at his feet. She then tells the bully to go to her office. The guy apologizes to Vice President Calvin for witnessing this. However, Calvin apparently doesn't care. Still, he mentions that something of this level cannot happen again. On her lap, Brittany notices that Blair's heartbeat has stopped. Later, we see his soul tried to leave his body but couldn't. Pulling him back, his teacher asks if the boy is okay. She hugs him, saying she was very worried. A voice draws their attention, declaring they'll need a good explanation. However, first, they need to do something. Standing up, Brittany introduces them both are from the Mathematical Society. Very politely, Blair bows and salutes President Dean and Vice President Calvin. Dean says the protagonist is a genius for helping Brittany solve the Ross mystery. His teacher intervenes, explaining that the mathematical problem and solution were entirely done by Blair. She only helped put it on paper. The men question if this is true, noting that if she claims credit, she'll receive many awards. The society will help her as much as possible without concern for money. He adds this will also help the academy. Brittany asks what will happen to Blair. Dean sighs upon hearing this. He says the boy is very young, and it's hard to believe he deciphered the Ross mystery. Blair takes her hand, nodding for her to accept. Even so, Brittany hesitates. Dean gives them time to think about the offer. The teacher accepts the time given, and the two leave. Sunset arrives, ceasing to illuminate the area. Both walk down the corridor in complete silence. His teacher explains that solving the Ross mystery doesn't help with development, but is significant for history. This honor belongs to the protagonist, and he shouldn't let anyone else receive it. The boy's face is melancholic. He then says it doesn't belong to him. Besides, she's not too old to accept something grand. After hearing this compliment, the woman's face brightens. Then the boy realizes he said something wrong again. All the students are looking at the board with various publications. A girl mentions that once again, Blair posted a new article with Miss Brittany. It was the Ross mystery that even after years, no scholar could solve. However, it was clearly teacher Brittany who did it since Blair is insignificant. Ignoring all the opinions, the protagonist only thinks about what he sent to his teacher. Nevertheless, he sighs because he can't do anything else. Blair hears some shouts from an adult man. Someone is saying he's a piece of trash and only knows how to fight. The person is the bully's father, complaining that he didn't send him to school to fight. Then he loses his temper, declaring that since the boy likes to fight, he'll finish it right there. The beating lands, and it certainly must have hurt. Right after that, the man apologizes for his son and begs for him not to be expelled. Dean says the bully's behavior is not the best. His father falls to the ground, begging for his son not to be expelled. The bully asks his father not to humiliate himself like that. Blair appears, calling the president. The man greets him. Blair also greets him, then asks what the problem is. Seeing the protagonist, the bully becomes very angry and grits his teeth. Dean explains the academy will expel him for violence and breaking rules. Someone touches the boy's sleeve. Kneeling, he also begs the protagonist, adding that when they get home, he'll teach him a lesson. If he's expelled, the bully's life will be over. With a soft heart, Blair sighs. He then tells the president that even though he had some small conflicts with the bully, he asks that he not be punished so severely. Everyone is silent. Looking at the bully's father, Dean announces that because of the protagonist, the expulsion decision will be temporarily withdrawn. However, if the boy does something like this again, there will be no second chance. The man takes his son's head, then says this won't happen. The bully thanks Dean. He also thanks Blair. His father goes home. Then the president asks Blair to go to the classroom. The boy goes there and opens the door. Before that, the bully questions Blair's decision. He stands still without saying a word. With a serious tone, Blair tells the boy not to treat his father like that again. The bully thanks him. He continues, saying something about earlier because Phage won't let the protagonist go so easily. After all, his uncle is the vice president of the academy. Later, Blair is exhausted from the day and still has to work. His employer is waiting for him. The boy doesn't understand the reason for the wait. He asks if Blair had offended someone recently. Naturally, this worries him, and he asks if something is wrong. Leaving that aside, the old man fires the protagonist. He adds that Blair can no longer live there because that's the order of the vice president. After the incident, his teacher said she'll take Blair and Isabel on an exchange trip. She asks if the boy will be busy tomorrow. Blair apologizes, saying he'll have to find a place to stay since he was expelled from the library. Simply and directly, Brittany says he can stay at her house since she has a spare room and lives alone. After thinking about it, the protagonist has visions of being accused of things. However, he says it's not very convenient. Like a good adult, she explains there's a big advantage he can ask math questions anytime. Then, a bit embarrassed, Blair accepts the invitation. Isabel arrives and immediately questions why Blair is present. Brittany explains everything, also saying the boy will live with her. This makes Isabel angry in her mind. The protagonist is still a pervert. However, her teacher rebukes her, declaring Blair is not that kind of person. Isabel says she's just worried. Meanwhile, Blair is disheartened since he's gaining a reputation as a pervert. The two joke a bit. Brittany asks Isabel to get ready for the exchange meeting. Looking back, she asks Blair to come in formal attire since the exchange will be at a seminar. The boy asks if he can go in his magical worker's uniform. Waving goodbye, she says if he has one, he can use it. At night, at the mansion where the exchange meeting will take place, the three stand admiring the wonderful view. Everyone came in their best clothes, and Blair tried not to fall behind. Brittany introduces the mansion as belonging to the Howard family. The permanent exchange residents, even in all the kingdoms, respect this family for their skill and knowledge in mathematics. Seeing the crowd and people around, he connects the dots between the Howards and Phage's house. Vice President Calvin is talking to the visitors. The dear teacher catches his attention. He welcomes the three of them. Blair says hello. Meanwhile, Isabel asks how long the boy has known the vice president. The man explains he was talking to some important people and asks if Brittany would like to meet them. At the same moment, she asks the two to go ahead. Both enter the mansion, where there are various delicious foods. Wasting no time, the boy attacks the first dish. Then he chokes. Isabel shouts, asking if he's a pig. She complains that the teacher didn't call them to eat, then drags Blair away. Looking at the wall, the protagonist notices something, a giant painting with a strange drawing in the middle. Isabel says these are the 7 points of the royal capital, of which the whole Howard family is proud. Blair asks what these 7 points are. The guy arrives, humiliating Blair for not knowing. He adds that he'll fight with the guards for letting someone of such low level in. The girl tells Phage to watch his words. Even so, the guy continues, saying the boy doesn't even deserve to eat the food there. Isabel takes the protagonist's hand, asking him to ignore the insults. Naturally, the jerk gets angry after seeing this scene. In his mind, the girl is only his, and no one can hold her hand. To taunt Blair, he asks if he's going to hide behind a woman. Going toward the guy, Blair questions Phage about the 7 points of the capital. She tries to stop Blair from doing something wrong. With a serious face, the protagonist shows great interest in the 7 points of the capital. Smiling, Phage asks if the boy really thinks he's a math genius. Isabel complains about this behavior. However, the guy says he wants to know the new mathematical ideas Blair has. He then shouts, alerting everyone that the protagonist is going to solve the 7 points of the capital. The girl is incredulous at this and doesn't know what to do. All the nobles believe that Brittany solved the Ross mystery and that the protagonist forced her to put his name on it. His teacher is also present and notices the commotion. Phage asks Blair not to disappoint the nobles. Suddenly, someone grabs the boy's hand. It's Brittany. The protagonist doesn't understand why she's there. She questions the reason for the conflict. Since the Howard family is the most powerful in Apollo City, this could make things difficult for him in the world of mathematics and even at the academy. Moreover, it's impossible to solve the 7 points of the capital. Phage knows this, which is why he threw this problem at Blair. The boy gets Brittany's attention. She looks to the side. Raising his glass, he asks if the boy isn't a great mathematician and questions if he lacks confidence. Furious, the woman was about to try something against Phage. However, the protagonist stops her, saying he'll try to solve the equation as a way to thank his senior for expelling him from the library. Both women are surprised by such a statement. If Blair says he'll do it, he'll certainly keep his word. He turns to Phage, saying he'll solve the 7 points of the capital. Phage explains this is an equation that only the patriarchs of the first generation managed to solve hundreds of years ago. He noticed a special topography of the capital at that time. The urban area wasn't as large as it is today, and the city was divided in two by the river. Because of this, the patriarch created 7 bridges to connect the urban region. Looking at his creation, he had a brilliant idea. It was possible to go to any area, crossing each bridge only once, and then return to the starting point without repeating the path. After making the idea public, many mathematicians researched to try finding the solution. However, despite numerous attempts, no one found the answer. In the end, the patriarch solved it and was supposed to publish it for the entire kingdom the next day. However, the whole day passed, and he didn't appear. Night fell. Days later, they found his body in the river. Because of this, the answer was lost, and no one from the new or old generation succeeded. Even so, the Howard family celebrates the patriarch's great achievement. This is the great glory of the entire family. Not much time passes after the explanation, and Blair seems to have already found the answer. Phage asks if the genius can find the solution. Surprisingly, the protagonist says he doesn't know. Phage laughs, questioning where all the bravery went. The women ask if they heard correctly. They compliment that Blair is a piece of trash and nothing but waste. However, a distinguished woman suggests maybe it isn't like that. Apparently, the protagonist tries to find the answer, but realizes there is no solution. In his past life, there was a similar problem. The whole room watches Blair intently. Both Brittany and Isabel don't understand anything. Phage says the boy only says this because he doesn't know the answer. However, the first patriarch of his family knew the solution. Blair refutes, asking if he has any evidence of this supposed solution. Phage loses his composure, questioning how the boy could doubt the sages. A man appears, telling Phage to stop. His name is Viscount Howard, and he tells his son not to use the achievements of the past generation to show off. At that moment, Phage trembles, apologizing to his father. The man says he heard a lot about Blair from Calvin. Blair greets him respectfully. The Viscount says he knows about the conflict with Phage and promptly apologizes. However, he accuses his family, stating the 7 points of the capital have no solution. Blair says he didn't accuse them, the problem truly has no solution. Beside him, Isabel notes it's the first time she's seen the boy so serious. The man becomes as furious as his son after hearing these statements. Against all odds, he says he has the evidence. Grabbing a paper and pen, he starts writing down the reasoning and the basis of the bridges. He then asks them to look each piece of land is considered a point. If you can connect all the points without drawing a line over another, and without lifting the pencil from the paper, it's as if you walk through all the bridges. Four Eyes are impressed. The Viscount's wife says it's wonderful. A blonde woman agrees her friend is right. The boy really has a good brain. For some reason, she seems proud. Blair continues the explanation, saying one can only lead the bridges using the start or the end. A point formed by even numbers can be called a uniform point. Brittany adds that if all the numbers are even, the 7 points of the capital can be resolved. Observing from afar, the boy continues seriously, stating his teacher is correct. Phage tries to question something, but the final definition is that it's impossible to reach the end and then return to the start without repeating the 7 bridges. In short, it's impossible to solve it. Onlookers are left speechless after hearing this. Blair declares this is a 100% impeccable argument. Phage says this is all nonsense, the family is being played by noble gossip. He yells, telling everyone not to believe Blair. Naturally, after this absurd argument, everyone looks at him with disdain. A woman remarks that the Howard family patriarch deceived scholars for centuries. Because of this statement, Phage's mind collapses. He then looks at his father, asking if he's not going to do something. However, the Viscount doesn't wait for good news and punches his son in the cheek. Phage falls to the ground, all battered by the blow. The man tells Phage to shut up because he is a failure. He adds that the boy is a disgrace. From the corner of his eye, the man vows he'll make Blair pay for what he did. Blair doesn't understand the reason for the resentment, but it seems the Viscount won't let this slide. Still, Blair calls him out, saying he answered one of Phage's questions. As one of the house rules, the boy should also answer one of his. Seeing his son on the ground, the Viscount realizes there's nothing to do, so he asks what the boy will say. Directly, Blair says it's simple and asks what the length of the diagonal of a square is. After hearing this, the Viscount is happy since his family is also famous for solving this kind of problem. His teacher questions the reason for such an easy question. The man replies that it's 2, adding that this is common knowledge. Closing his eyes, Blair says the answer is wrong. He then says he wants to know the length of the actual diagonal. The Viscount is left speechless. The crowd starts gossiping about the matter. Naturally, Blair knows the man won't answer. Although in his world, scientists were respected, most were unknown. The public only cared about celebrity scandals. Even though not many know about mathematics, there are only high-level people here. The students present have contributed significantly, so it doesn't matter if they're noble or not. It turned out they gathered and formed the School of Numbers. Everyone in the Howard family has great influence because it's the center of the academy. Even Isabel's father, the lord of the city, must show respect to them. This school integrates everything possible to deliver maximum knowledge to students. They believe all mystical events can be discovered through numbers. Practically, it's like the ancient Pythagorean school founded by Pythagoras. It was once very powerful, but had a fatal flaw in its belief. In summary, everyone in this world believes only in whole numbers, like Pythagoras. The person who discovered decimal numbers was his student named Hippasus. While trying to measure a diagonal after this discovery, the school was shaken, leading to its end. The sect believers were horrified by this, so they decided to tie Hippasus up and throw him into the Aegean Sea. However, the truth cannot be hidden forever. Soon, their descendants discovered it. Subsequent generations called these numbers irrational numbers. Soon, human understanding expanded. Judging by the Viscount's expression, he must know about the existence of irrational numbers. However, we see the man is sweating. Everyone is trying to find the correct number for the diagonal. Brittany asks what the hell this is because even she can't find it. Then the boy explains to her that this is a new number discovered long ago but may have been covered up by others at the time. Phage sees his father's powerless image. Seeing that, he knows that perhaps today, he won't leave with all his teeth. This elevates his anger toward Blair. He then shouts, declaring all this happened because of him. Therefore, he must die immediately. He runs toward the boy to attack him. Preparing himself, Blair positions to avoid being hit. Before anything happens, someone grabs his hand. With pure rage, she observes him. Phage yells for her to let go. However, the woman apologizes and says she must stop the boy from doing something impulsive. Still, the boy tries to free his arm, but he realizes she's too strong. Behind him, his father yells furiously. Trembling, the Viscount asks if he knows how many misfortunes he caused today. The boy remains silent but continues to stare at Blair. Quickly, the man calls everyone's attention. He then says he deeply regrets this terrible incident and promises that from now on, he'll discipline his son thoroughly. Additionally, regarding Blair's question, he'll send the answer in a few days. He thanks everyone for their guidance and takes his leave, telling Blair to enjoy himself at the mansion tonight. In his mind, the boy knows it will be difficult to find the answer, but he trusts the Howards. Leaving, the Viscount is unsatisfied with everything, as he was humiliated by a child. Blair thanks the lady who helped him. She asks if he has forgotten her. Isabel appears, hitting Blair. She asks how he could flirt with another person besides her. Naturally, Blair doesn't understand a word of what she said. The woman lets out a relaxed smile. She then says she was joking, but it's admirable how the girl flirts. She adds that the relationship between the two is so close it's enviable. Isabel tries to retort to Alice but ends up fumbling her words. She questions the reason for her presence. Alice responds that she's always participated in meetings like this, but it's the first time she's seen Isabel here. Brittany explains that Alice's family is famous in the city of Yapo, and she always attends exchange meetings as a representative. Extending her hand, the woman reintroduces herself to Blair. They both greet each other and exchange jokes. Alice leans in a bit to observe the boy closely. She then seductively asks if she could inquire about mathematical questions alone with him in the future. Blair swiftly refuses after hearing her question. With a stern and dumbfounded face, he reiterates his rejection with more respect. He explains she should discuss such problems with Miss Brittany since he claims his ideas are inspired by her. Alice chuckles for a bit, calling him unpredictable. She then proceeds to bid goodbye, telling him they should have a good chat when there's no one around next time. Once she leaves, Isabel starts to pout and gets mad about Alice trying to seduce Blair. Meanwhile, Brittany simply waves her goodbye. Isabel also scolds Blair for almost being seduced, accusing him of wanting to follow her. He defends himself, telling her there's no reason for him to follow her. She nags him, saying he's just like every boy who gets all excited when pretty girls approach them. Blair retorts, asking her smoothly if Alice is as beautiful as her. She blushes at his question and also asks him if he thinks Alice is prettier. He flatly replies that he thinks Isabel is prettier, which makes her flustered and unable to talk back anymore. Blair thinks to himself that she's being too persistent. His answer was truthful since they were talking about the face and not the body. While Isabel is flattered by their exchange, a person suddenly approaches and greets them. The man is Vice President Calvin. Brittany asks why he came. Calvin states that the three of them are the talk of the party, so he had to come see what the ruckus was all about. Blair tells him he's over-exaggerating, he was simply helping to solve the problem that was presented, then asked questions afterward. The vice president informs him that the problems he solved and the questions he raised weren't simple at all. Solving the 7 bridges of the royal capital has been the greatest honor of the Howard family. However, his argument today could lead to their fall. The number he mentioned could also cause the number school to collapse since it directly goes against their foundations, which would shake the entire mathematics community. He then sharply focuses his gaze on him, asking who he really is. There must be a reason such talent was only recently revealed. His suspicions grow, and he also inquires about his purpose. This takes them aback. However, Blair simply brushes his questions off, telling him it was Senior Phage who took the initiative to ask the question. He simply had an idea, so he helped him answer it, adding that the number he inquired about was only due to curiosity, and the Viscount already told them he could find the number. Calvin thinks deeply and decides to believe Blair's statements. He then assures him that the Mathematical Society is always on the side of the truth. As Blair was feeling relieved that he managed to escape his questions, the Vice President raises a warning to him. He ominously states that he should be careful of the Howards since they're a lot of trouble to deal with. The scene cuts to the Viscount sitting calmly on a sofa while Phage shivers on the floor after seemingly being beaten. He struggles to catch his breath as his body is covered with bruises. An ominous man informs the Viscount that everything is now ready and they can execute the plan at any time. The Viscount orders the man to wait until Blair leaves the manor and make his death look like an accident, just like how they did before. Suddenly, a voice talks to the Viscount, calling him father. It states he's planning to kill again. Behind them, there's a mysterious man dressed in white that they haven't noticed yet. The Viscount looks behind him and recognizes the man as his son, Abel. He then asks why he's still alive after all this time. However, he stays silent. The assassin says it's impossible he lives since he made sure he was dead, though Abel ignores him and tells the Viscount that it's normal he didn't expect him to be alive since he knew his father is the one who gave the order, like how he's doing right now. The Viscount erupts in fury, accusing Abel of conspiring with Blair. Abel calmly criticizes his father for his cruelty toward family, even after all these years. His father draws a flintlock pistol and threatens to shoot unless Abel reveals his true intentions. As Fred regains consciousness, Abel finally speaks. He tells the Viscount that he asks too many questions and doesn't know where to begin. Standing tall, he explains that the young man named Blair has no connection to him, but his actions provided the perfect opportunity to return to the family. His true purpose is to reform the Howard family from the ground up. The Viscount is confused by his goals and asks if he truly intends to change the family. Abel confirms this and asks what the current foundation of the family is. His father answers that it is honor. Abel sternly denies this, calling his words lies. The Viscount grows irritated and demands to know why. Abel reveals that the Viscount already knew the Seven Bridges mystery had no solution. The number Blair mentioned cannot be expressed in real numbers. He adds that the Viscount concealed this truth to preserve the so-called honor of the family and the number school. Worse still, he eliminated anyone who attempted to reveal the truth, including Abel himself, his own biological son. Viscount Howard snaps, ordering Abel to stop talking. He declares he will kill him again for the sake of the family. Abel reminds his father that he said the truth would eventually surface, leading to the family's destruction. Today, Blair exposed their lies before the entire mathematics community. He challenges the Viscount, can he eliminate everyone who now knows the truth? Abel swiftly seizes the Viscount's gun and points it at his own heart. He taunts his father, saying that if the truth cannot be hidden, tomorrow everyone will know their secrets and the family will fall. The Viscount's hand trembles under Abel's relentless pressure. Finally, he releases the gun in resignation as Abel takes it from him. Viscount Howard desperately asks what they can do to prevent such a future. Abel replies that he will replace him as patriarch and transform the entire Howard family so they can survive. He tells his father menacingly that only he can save the family. The Viscount falls silent, stunned by the statement. He breaks into a cold sweat as Abel whispers his plans. A few days later at Brittany's residence, Blair wakes to an obnoxiously loud alarm clock beside his bed. He's relieved to finally sleep in a comfortable bed without the odors of the utility room where he used to stay. Half awake, Blair leaves his room to greet Brittany good morning, but he notices something unusual in her room. A massive pile of papers is arranged on her desk. He's shocked by the sheer volume she wrote, realizing Brittany stayed up late trying to calculate the number again. Since the mathematics exchange meeting, Questions have surrounded the Howard family's credibility due to the truth Blair revealed about the Seven Bridges mystery. Even more shocking is the number he mentioned that cannot be expressed using rational numbers, leading others to call it the devil's number. Nearly all scholars have been attempting to determine the number, but they cannot express it no matter how hard they try. Blair thinks this is natural since expressing it with rational numbers is impossible. Irrational numbers are a foreign field this world has never explored. Even so, he respects the efforts of the scholars and believes they will eventually discover the solution, just as they did in his own world. As he looks toward the future, a dove flies in the distance, signaling a new chapter in his life. Blair examines the papers on the desk and sees something that catches his attention, a newspaper containing news about the Howard family changing their patriarch. The new patriarch has announced he will dissolve the number school. Blair thinks abandoning the school is the best choice for the Howard family and wonders what suddenly changed within the family to prompt such a decisive reaction. As he imagines what the new patriarch might look like, Brittany walks up from behind, lightly dressed. She greets Blair good morning while rubbing her face, still half awake. He returns her greeting while trying not to stare at her seductive figure. She doesn't seem to realize how lightly dressed she is. She scolds Blair for not waking her up as she told him to do last night. He claims he simply forgot while trying to avoid looking at her body. Brittany teases him, calling him a bad boy, which flusters him. She adds that she knows he didn't really forget and seductively states that she also knows he knows the number. She tells him sweetly to stop teasing her, her breasts nearly spilling out, causing Blair to get a nosebleed. Brittany notices his bleeding nose and finally realizes what she's wearing. She freezes in embarrassment, then slaps Blair across the face, calling him a pervert. After their awkward interaction, they head to the kitchen for Blair to make breakfast, still bearing her handprint on his cheek. Brittany feels guilty for slapping him and apologizes, saying it was a subconscious reaction. Blair points out that she has a different personality after waking up, causing her embarrassment. She asks if she's annoying when she just woke up, but is surprised when Blair answers no nonchalantly, adding that he doesn't dislike her either way. Brittany blushes slightly after hearing his answer and thanks him for understanding. Blair feels proud of himself for smoothly diffusing the situation. As he cooks their breakfast, Brittany asks why he's mixing the red fruits with the eggs. He explains that he's making scrambled eggs. She's confused since she doesn't know what he's talking about. It doesn't exist in their world yet. He finishes cooking and sets the delicious eggs onto the plate. As he completes the dish, he explains that the red fruits are called tomatoes, which are used to make everyone's favorite scrambled eggs in his hometown. He also remembers this is the dish he always used to make. After making breakfast, Blair heads to his class and tells her to try it herself. Brittany asks him to wait, then wipes a stain on his shirt with a clean cloth. Blair is taken aback since he didn't expect her to get this close and freezes, blushing. She finishes cleaning his shirt until it's sparkling clean. Brittany reminds him to be careful as he heads off to school. After Blair leaves, she's left alone at the table, wondering if the eggs are really edible due to their strange appearance. She takes a spoonful and tries it, becoming shocked at the taste. The fragrance makes her mouth water, and the sweetness of the fresh tomato is incredibly refreshing, causing her to curl her toes in delight. She shivers as she revels in the out-of-this-world taste of the scrambled eggs. Meanwhile, Blair's stomach is grumbling at school since he forgot to eat breakfast after leaving so early. In class, the girls are talking about the new head of the Howard family, praising his good looks. They also discuss the mysterious person who solved the 7 bridges and proposed the devil's number before disappearing. One girl states she heard from her uncle that the boy who solved it is the same age as them and requested to remain anonymous. The blonde girl says she can't believe the person who shook the entire mathematics community is their age. If she had to guess, the person must have been an old man. While the girls gossip in the background, Isabella asks Blair if he really doesn't know how to express the devil's number. Blair answers nonchalantly that he doesn't know everything and that he already said everything he knows. She frustratedly slams her hand onto the desk, accusing him of lying again. But someone suddenly tells her not to trouble Blair. The person is Alice, who has just entered the room. She greets them good morning and sends a flying kiss at Blair, taking him by surprise. Isabella asks why she's here since she's a third-year student. Blair returns her greeting kindly. The other boys notice the two beauties of the school and become jealous of his luck. The boy with freckles also wonders why Blair is suddenly so fortunate. Jasmine also notices the pretty girls and glances back at them. Alice suddenly gets close to Blair and asks about the devil's number, making him nervous due to their proximity. His stomach rumbles loudly again from nervousness, embarrassing him as the others react. He apologizes for his stomach suddenly grumbling. Alice softly grins at his embarrassment, while Isabella calls him a pig for being so hungry this early. Alice pulls out a delicious-looking bread and presents it to Blair. She states that she accidentally brought extra lunch and asks him to help her finish it. Blair's mouth waters after seeing the bread. He finally gives in and accepts it, thanking Alice for the bread and calling her a good friend. Isabella pulls on his cheek and stops him from eating the bread, scolding him for accepting food from strangers. Blair tells her he tried to reject her, but the bread looked too delicious to pass up. She gets even angrier, stating he should have asked her first for food. He rebuts, saying she would just call him a pig again if he asked. Isabella shouts that she doesn't care. Alice interrupts their conversation, stating it's only natural for her to give him assistance since he's a once-in-a-lifetime genius. Isabella grows irritated by her statement and hands Blair an extra bread she just happens to have brought, adding that he should return the bread he got from Alice. Blair becomes confused by her sudden kindness. Alice teases her for interfering with his choice and points out that they're not in such a relationship for her to be jealous. Isabella grows even more irritated by the details she pointed out and tells Blair he must choose between her bread and Alice's. He can only pick one. Alice comforts him, telling him it's okay to choose what he likes, even if it's hers. Tensions rise as the two girls stare each other down with Blair, unable to have a quiet meal. As they antagonize each other, Blair struggles to find a way to diffuse the situation. He decides to accept Isabella's bread and takes it from her hand. She celebrates, showing off that her bread is better than Alice's, who is now also irritated. But Blair shoves both pieces of bread into his mouth as he tries to swallow them. He starts sweating profusely and almost chokes in the process. The bread finally reaches his throat and starts going down to his stomach. He successfully eats both pieces of bread and compliments the two for their delicious bread, tears running down his face. His classmates who witness the scene are starting to worry about him due to the stunt he just pulled. Isabella becomes elated, thinking he wolfed down her bread due to its deliciousness. On the other hand, Alice wipes a crumb of bread from Blair's face and starts putting it in her mouth, while seductively looking at him as she licks the crumbs off her finger. She also lightly scolds Blair for being careless. Isabella is engulfed in flames of anger due to Alice flirting with Blair. Suddenly, the bell rings, and Alice realizes it's time for class. She bids goodbye to Blair. He returns it as well while looking like a pervert. Isabella notices his perverted gaze and points at him menacingly, stating she will wait for him after class. He has no choice but to agree. Isabella then leaves the room and slams the door in rage. Blair is relieved after the two girls left and breathes a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a large hand pinches his cheek while calling his name. It's Toby, and he asks when Blair got to know Alice. Blair answers that he met her the other night. Toby becomes surprised that he met her at night and misunderstands the situation. Blair clears it up by telling him he met her at an academic conference of the Math Association that Miss Brittany took him to. Toby remembers the news about the conference and asks if it was the one where the devil's number was uncovered. But Blair interrupts, telling him that Brittany has arrived. During class, Blair once again solves the problems on the board with ease. Brittany tells the class it's time to discuss the question on the blackboard with their respective groups. She then whispers to Blair and hands him a piece of bread. He asks what it's for. She tells him it's for his breakfast since he didn't eat in the morning. He sweats profusely at the thought of eating bread again after munching down on it earlier. Blair then heads to his group for the discussion. Toby asks why he has bread again after seeing it in his hands. He avoids the question and decides to have the discussion first. But a girl in his group suddenly slams the desk with her hands. The pink-haired girl who slammed the desk asks Blair who the mysterious man at the conference was since she heard from Toby that he was present that day. He looks over at Toby, who is avoiding his gaze, as he tries to brush off her question by saying he only sort of saw the person. The pink-haired girl asks how he sort of saw him. Meanwhile, Jasmine seems to be thinking of something. Blair explains that he was absent when the mysterious man stood up. Then, when he returned, the venue was a mess and he couldn't find the man anywhere. The girl asks why he left the venue at such an important moment. He answers with an excuse, saying he had diarrhea from eating too much, which silences all of them. Toby states while picking his nose that he can't believe Blair wasted such a good chance. The girl tells him it's enough that Blair was qualified to attend such an event since only rich or noble people can attend. She also requests Blair to come to her house to be a math tutor since she still has many questions. If he gets tired, he can easily rest in their large manor. Toby is skeptical of her intentions and asks if she really just wants to learn math, which makes her angry. She states that she is simply studious. Meanwhile, Jasmine looks at them, appearing irritated. Time passes and it's finally time for the bell to ring again, signaling the end of classes. Blair lets out a deep breath after managing to evade Isabella after class. He decides to practice magic in the meantime. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him and asks when he became so interested in practicing magic. He wonders who it is and spots a hooded figure in front of him. The person lunges a knife at him from nowhere. While the knife is aimed at his neck, he asks who the person threatening him is. The person in front of him is a blue-haired woman wearing a hoodie to conceal her identity. This person is revealed to be Jasmine, and she orders him not to move since the dagger she's holding is very sharp. Blair asks what compelled her to do such a thing, but she interrupts him midway. She then states that Blair is the one who solved the 7 bridges and proposed the devil's number, so she wonders why his math and magic powers have grown so rapidly. Jasmine yells at him, accusing him of impersonating Blair since he has all this talent that he previously didn't have. Blair finally speaks, telling her that she has so many questions he doesn't even know where to start. He introduces himself again, thinking he shouldn't mention that he came from another world. Jasmine suddenly pulls his cheeks, mistakenly thinking he has a disguise. She states that his disguise will be revealed with her technique no matter how perfect it is. But she meets with surprise since his face is still normal even after she applies her technique, with only his face hurting as a result. Blair kicks her foot in retaliation, causing her to stumble and fall toward the ground. She panics after losing her footing and realizes she's going to fall, so she braces for the oncoming impact. But surprisingly, she stops falling as her eyes open. Blair managed to catch her right before she was about to fall. She blushes slightly, seeing the close distance between them, though Blair keeps a straight face, unfazed. Jasmine snaps out of it and finally tells him to let go. He complies with her request, but in return, he orders her not to point the spoon he previously mistook for a dagger at his neck. He also firmly states that he really is Blair. Jasmine is still flustered and says he should let go before anything else. After he lets go, she asks how he is suddenly so gifted with magic and math and speaks very differently from the original Blair despite not having a disguise. He explains that he really is Blair, but not the same one she knows. He only woke up like this after a long dream. Blair starts telling her about his original world, a world with no magic but very advanced technology. The people in his world didn't know how to use magic since they only saw it as fiction. Instead, science and technology skyrocketed even beyond magic, and people could use various technological creations to complete tasks that magic cannot. Relying on that advanced technology, their people extended their exploration outside the planet and could travel through the stars and reach other planets. In that world, he was only a math teacher, which is the source of all the advanced mathematical knowledge he possesses. During his class, one of the girls who resembled Jasmine raised her hand to ask a question, so he entertained it. The student asked if the starry skies could really be traversed and if there are other planets beyond the stars. He answered the question properly, stating they can indeed travel through the starry sky and that there are countless planets in the universe. Though he answered properly, the students still made fun of him for being a lame teacher, embarrassing him to the point that he didn't know what to say next. As he remembers the past, the sun slowly starts going down outside the building. The light from the windows slowly fades as a sign that the moon is about to come out. Blair apologizes to Jasmine after cutting his past short. He says he woke up after that long ordeal with his current talent for math and magic, and that he also lost some of his memory, which makes Jasmine look worried about him. He finishes all of his explanations, so now it's her turn to talk. But she has nothing more to say other than she now believes he truly is Blair, who also used to talk about the same things from before. He asks if he really said such things before. She confirms, saying he was more interested in science than magic back then. She also tells him that the past Blair wished to live in a world without magic, partly due to his lack of magical talent. She believes Blair has amnesia and assures him that she'll help him regain his memories. Blair goes along with her and thanks her for all of her help while shaking her hand. This causes her to become flustered. She panics and blurts out that she promises to bring his memories back so he can rest easy. Sometime later inside the academy, Blair is walking in the hallway, then stops to think about something deeply. But someone suddenly grabs him from behind. It's his friend Toby, and he also pulls him off the floor. They quarrel for a bit while Toby grabs him tightly, but someone approaches them from a distance. Blair notices the man stalking them and asks him to introduce himself. He also manages to escape from Toby. Toby pinches his nose with his 2 fingers. The man who was watching them is Senior Fred, which Toby quickly recognizes. Toby asks what he's scheming again since he's being very suspicious. But Fred simply bows his head to them and apologizes for his mistakes back at the manor. He states that he sincerely apologizes and asks to be forgiven for his wrongdoings. The other students see the scene and wonder what's happening. Blair also wonders and asks what he should forgive him for since he genuinely doesn't remember, which causes the girls in the crowd to start speculating why Fred is suddenly apologizing. Senior Fred hands him something, stating that his brother, who is the new patriarch, wanted to give it to him as an invitation. He is going to hold an explanatory meeting for the entire kingdom's mathematics community tonight. As he bows down to Blair, he is filled with frustration, but he keeps it hidden as he tries to get Blair to come to the meeting. Toby advises him not to go, speculating that the senior is up to no good again. Blair thinks for a bit after reading the invitation, but ultimately decides to go to the mansion despite the risks. At the meeting, it's full of wealthy-looking people who each have their own conversations. Blair is intimidated by the massive mansion, but decides to follow through due to his curiosity. Suddenly, someone pinches his ear, startling him with pain. He realizes it's none other than Isabella, who happened to just arrive at the conference. She scolds him for not waiting for her in the classroom. Miss Brittany also arrives and is surprised that he came as well. With her full seductive figure in view, she tells him they were looking for him at the academy earlier. Blair asks if she also received an invitation. She states that there has been news that the Howard family will hold a meeting tonight, so it was only natural that she and almost everyone in the mathematics community would come. She adds that almost all the people in the math circle came, but no one received an invitation like he did. Blair finds it strange that he's the only one to receive an invitation, so he wonders what it's for. But someone suddenly interrupts him and plays with his ear, causing his face to turn red. It's Alice, who also attended the event. She rubs his ear while teasing him, which makes Isabella angry in more ways than one. Isabella glares at Alice and tells her that she obviously didn't put any force into pulling his ear, but it's all red, so it must have hurt. Blair gets nervous after seeing the two face off again and braces for impact. But Miss Brittany interrupts their scuffle and asks all of them to come to the briefing, though they're still glaring at each other as they walk into the venue. Blair suddenly notices something on the wall. The Seven Bridges painting has been taken down, leaving only a blank picture frame behind. Brittany looks at the empty frame and wonders what Abel did to solve the current situation. Blair asks her if she knows Abel since she mentioned his name. She says it was nothing deep and that she only used to be classmates with Abel. He was also going to become a teacher at the academy but suddenly disappeared 3 years ago. She was also surprised when she learned he was the new head of the Howard family, which makes Blair ask what kind of person Abel is. Brittany thinks for a bit, then answers that he was a person who only had mathematics in his eyes. In a room inside the mansion, Abel sits at his desk while looking at some paperwork. Fred informs him that everyone has arrived and is waiting for him to show up at the venue. But Abel simply tells his brother that he has never been in love since he doesn't know that being late to a date increases their date's expectations. He also asks Fred if the man he talked about arrived. Fred anxiously answers, saying that there were so many people he couldn't really be sure if Blair was there. Abel puts his hand on his brother's shoulder and assures him he's not like their father, so he doesn't need to be afraid anymore. He then tells him they should now go to the venue to start a new chapter in the Howard family. At the main venue, there are crowds of people socializing. Suddenly, a man spots someone in the distance. It's the Howard brothers, which causes him to announce to everyone that they have finally arrived. Despite having a large audience, Abel still walks gracefully and as calm as a rock, while his brother nervously struts behind him. The people at the venue look at the new head and realize he is still very young. Abel starts the meeting by greeting the guests, stating he is thankful to them for coming to the briefing. He introduces himself as Abel Howard and respectfully bows down before the guests while also thanking them. Brittany notices that Abel has changed from 3 years ago in both dress and speech. Abel pulls out a book from his coat and tells the audience he will get to the point quickly since they have been waiting for so long already, though he states he will open up about his family's past first. Blair notices the book he's holding in his hand and wonders what it contains. Abel states that this book contains a note from the first patriarch of the Howard family, which entails the truth that has been hidden by their family for so long. The note states that the first patriarch tried to solve the Seven Bridges mystery back then by repeatedly walking the Seven Bridges like the other scholars at the time. Although he didn't find a solution for a long time, the first patriarch was fully determined not to give up. But one day, he discovered that he had successfully completed a non-repetitive route. This caused him to announce his success on the spot and promise everyone that he would demonstrate the moves he made the following morning. The first patriarch was so proud at that time that he didn't verify his findings first before announcing to the public. But during the night, when he came to the bridge to confirm his findings, he finally realized he had made a crucial mistake. The fact is that he didn't succeed in finding a solution, he only misremembered the route he took, which caused him to think he found a route with no repetition. He realized he would become a laughingstock in the morning after making such a tragic mistake, so he committed suicide due to his great shame. In order to atone for his mistake to the public, at the same time, he also left a note which recorded his mistaken findings in detail and asked future generations to clarify the facts to the public on his behalf. But his descendants did not follow his orders and instead hid the notes from the public, making it seem that the patriarch accidentally fell into the water with all the proof he had. They did all that to maintain the so-called honor of the family until today. After telling the story, Abel stands resolute in front of the large audience. telling all of them that the truth cannot be hidden forever and that the Howard family will face the truth and the backlash they will receive. He then humbly bows again to ask for their forgiveness. Fred is shocked at his brother's bravery and attempts to stop him, but quickly changes his mind. Abel clearly apologizes to everyone on behalf of the whole Howard family. The people in the meeting are shocked at his revelation and start talking among themselves. Blair sees his decision on the matter and deduces that the new patriarch is very decisive. Seeing that the Howard family lied about the Seven Bridges mystery, he is impressed to see that Abel actually revealed the truth, which will cause more responsibility for future generations. But the first patriarch's honor was preserved. The lady in the top hat asks if Abel disbanded the Numbers faction a few days ago as atonement for the family's lie. The new patriarch informs her that it was indeed a form of atonement, but there is a different main reason: the so-called devil's number. The lady asks if he still hasn't found the number yet. Abel answers, saying they haven't found the number yet, but it's not because of the limitation of his abilities. He announces that it's due to the fact that the devil's number does not exist, which surprises Blair. The other guests ask him to clarify what he just said. Abel tells them that the number doesn't exist in their existing mathematical cognition system, which was also the reason why he disbanded the number sect. A nerdy boy from the crowd asks if the devil's number is incomprehensible. Abel reveals that the devil's number isn't unsolvable at all, but instead is a whole new area that the mathematics group still hasn't explored yet. He states that the solution for the community to solve this is to question the one who proposed the number in the first place, Blair from Street Donna's Academy. The crowd starts talking among themselves once again as they wonder who Blair really is. Abel continues his statements, saying they don't recognize Blair since he is very humble with his discoveries, so he asked everyone to hide his name. But Abel firmly tells them they need Blair to step up and lead them in order to greatly improve the mathematics community. Brittany looks behind her to talk to Blair and ask him what he plans to do, but he is nowhere to be found, with no one having any idea where he suddenly went. Fred informs his older brother that Blair doesn't seem to be in the area. Abel tells him he mistakenly thought that Blair wouldn't be able to hold back his curiosity and step up by himself. But he also states that he will come to him sooner or later with a confident look on his face, which causes Fred to be a bit taken aback by his brother's statements. Later at school, the girls in the class are gossiping about something. They're gossiping about Blair, who was revealed to be the one that proposed the devil's number, and that people are asking him to address the problem at hand. Blair is troubled by the fact that Abel managed to shift the attention to him instead of the Howard family. Suddenly, Toby pokes him from his side while calling him. Blair responds quickly, saying he doesn't know anything despite Toby not saying anything yet. But Toby simply points to something in front of them. Blair looks over to see what it is and sees a massive man who is also their history professor named Hank, which makes him panic since he wasn't paying attention. Hank tells him that he knows he's good at mathematics, but asks if he has a problem with him since he keeps failing his history tests every single time. Blair makes an excuse, saying his memory of the subject is still hazy, so he can't recall it. Hank slams his palm on his desk, startling him quite a lot. The teacher then scolds him while shouting that he still needs to focus on his studies even if he is famous now. Toby raises his hand nervously and informs the teacher that someone is looking for Blair. Hank shouts at him for interrupting, but Toby continues to point at the person looking for Blair. The teacher explicitly states that no one is allowed to interrupt the lesson he is teaching, not even the Vice President Calvin. Calvin comes up from behind and grabs his shoulder, then states he is the one looking for Blair, startling him. He begins to double down on his words and finally lets Blair go. They go to the hallway after leaving the classroom. A man dressed the same as Calvin also tags along. The vice president greets him once again with a warm smile on his face. Blair looks defeated as he realizes Calvin came to him for the devil's number. Calvin states that the outside world is waiting for him to stand up and solve the devil's number. which puts them under pressure, so they have no choice but to ask for help. Blair thinks for a bit before answering, but he's interrupted by the man next to the vice president, saying they really need his help and that it brings no harm to him either. Blair bluntly tells them he really doesn't want to help, with a bright smile on his face. A while later, Toby is in a rush and suddenly opens the door to Miss Brittany's office. She becomes puzzled as to why he is in such a rush. She asks him what he is rushing for as he tries to catch his breath. Toby tells her in a panic that Blair was suddenly taken away, which causes her to become worried. Meanwhile, inside the meeting room at the school, a handful of people are on standby in front of the door. The people are all scholars and officials of the math circle who gathered around Blair, putting him under immense pressure. Among them are the 4 associate deans of the academy and also the 3 vice presidents of the Mathematical Society. Blair also realizes there are more than a dozen association deacons waiting outside the door as well. He states that he knows Vice President Calvin planned to pressure him in order to agree to tell them about the devil's number. Calvin tells him he released such a devilish problem, which is also his responsibility since he started it. Blair responds by asking why they are so inclined to call the truth devilish. The deans of the school are triggered by his statement, but Calvin doesn't let them talk. He then asks Blair if the devil's number really could not be expressed as a ratio of whole numbers. Blair replies, saying it's not only the devil's number. The square root of 2, 3, and 5 are also numbers that can't be expressed as a ratio of integers. He states there are an infinite amount of numbers that can't be proved mathematically, and he can only tell them a little. The mature-looking man asks what he meant by that and also asks how many centuries they have been wrong. Blair assures them this is a very normal thing due to the nature of mathematics, which is constantly changing. As long as they find proof, they can expand the numbers. Calvin pleads for his help after realizing he truly knows the truth about the devil's number. But Blair refuses and apologizes, saying he really can't help them with this. He also states he knows what they are afraid of, the revelation that the truth they have believed for years will be overturned. Blair tells them that fear is normal, informing them that in his hometown, generations of people also challenged such problems in the pursuit of truth and knowledge. He explains it's due to that fear of the unknown that they should want to understand it and embrace the truth, which is what their ancestors have done for so long. Blair tells them he believes the mathematics community will be able to face their fear and have the courage to overcome this challenge. After all, the hymn of man is the hymn of courage. The vice president is impressed by his words and is a bit taken aback. They then suddenly bow their heads to him, startling Blair. Calvin says he is truly right and apologizes for their brash behavior. He then thanks him for his guidance for the day and says the mathematics community will always remember his contribution. Blair tries to assure them it's all good, but the door suddenly flies into the room. A scholar is hit by the flying door and stumbles to the ground. It also hits a chair on the way. They look and recall the door flying out at such speed. It's Brittany, who seems to be enraged due to the immense magic power she is letting out. She also readies 2 whirlwinds in her hands as she stands at the door menacingly. Brittany terrifyingly asks them what they did to Blair as she looks ready to attack at any moment. Blair raises his hands to call her. He then tells her he is right there while she is facing the scholars all over the room. Blair embarrassingly informs her they only wanted to have a chat with him. Brittany becomes flustered after realizing such a fact and profusely apologizes to the deans. Calvin tells her he understands since Blair is her beloved disciple and that it was also partly their fault for suddenly taking him away. She struggles to respond and just stands awkwardly in place. After the whole scuffle at the meeting room, they walk in the hallway as they're getting ready to go back home. She tells Blair she impulsively went for him after hearing from Toby that he was taken since she thought he was going to be harmed. He assures her he can handle it. In front of so many students in the school, no one would try anything on him. Brittany tells him she has a question she has been meaning to ask. Blair asks what it is she's wondering about. She continues and begins to ask him a question about why he came up with the devil's number to create such chaos in the math community. Blair tries to feign ignorance by saying he was only following the mathematics tradition to ask a question. He just didn't expect that the question he asked would lead to the discovery of the devil's number. But his answer doesn't seem to quell Brittany's curiosity. She then asks another question about if he likes Isabella while she looks away in embarrassment. Blair is confused by her question and doesn't know what to say. Miss Brittany mistakenly imagines that he got jealous because Fred was hitting on Isabella, so he confronted him with such a question. Brittany even grabs both of his shoulders. She then tells him she won't tell anyone about such a thing, and that she also supports him, which makes Blair sweat profusely and try to clear up the misunderstanding. But she goes off to her office before he can even say anything. He tries to stop her, but to no avail, which causes him to be petrified in embarrassment due to her misunderstanding. That night when they return home, Blair is cooking yet another meal from his hometown, while thinking that Brittany's imagination is so strong that he will try to explain it to her again later. But Isabella suddenly shows up and asks him what he is cooking, confusing him as to why she is suddenly there. Brittany tells him she invited her since she wants to learn about the devil's number and that he should let her try his cooking as well. He then asks if she majors in wind magic. Isabella answers, stating that Miss Brittany is a high-level magician of wind magic. Blair states he wants to make a refrigerator but would need the help of a senior water magician for that. Brittany asks what it is after hearing its name. Blair explains it's a box made of ice which is used to preserve ingredients. Isabella also takes a look at the illustration he gave for the refrigerator. They see a poorly drawn blueprint, which makes Isabella chuckle before bursting out in laughter while making fun of his drawing. Blair angrily takes the drawing out of her hand as she makes fun of it. Meanwhile, Brittany seems to be focused on something and calls Blair. She then asks him if the structure she made using her powers is akin to what he had in mind for a refrigerator. Her eyes also glow in purple as she casts the spell to make it. Blair tells her this is exactly what he had in mind and asks her how she managed to do it. She answers, saying she also knows water magic, so making ice structures is pretty easy for her. Isabella is shocked after seeing she can cast more than one type of magic since there are only a handful of magicians who can do such a thing. Blair then asks why she stays at Street Donna's even after having such magical talent. Her face darkens a bit due to his question, and her eyes wander off to the pan. She then tells Blair the food is ready to avoid his question, which is effective since he rushes to turn off the fire. They then set the table with all the delicious food Blair made. Isabella says it looks weird despite smelling good. Brittany tells her she also thought the same but found out it was really delicious. Blair states the dishes are all from his hometown and that it was normal Isabella hadn't tried them yet since he didn't invite her to eat them. Isabella hides the fact that she wants to eat the food and instead stubbornly tells him she won't eat it even if she starved to death today. But she quickly gives up later as they eat. She then licks her lips after tasting such savory dishes. Isabella is in a daze after finishing such delicious food. Blair mocks her and reminds her she said she wouldn't touch his food even if she was starving, which causes her to pull his ear and nag him for making such delicious dishes as he screams in pain. Brittany laughs after witnessing such a lively scene. Blair asks what the matter is. She answers, saying she really thinks they are a good match, which causes the two to freeze in place after hearing her words. Isabella turns away and states she doesn't match such a pervert at all. Blair also turns away and states he also doesn't match such an arrogant girl. Brittany then announces that Isabella will be promoted to a junior magician soon, so she asks her what department she plans to specialize in the future. She tells her she wants to specialize in wind magic, just like Miss Brittany. Brittany explains that wind magic is indeed powerful in the later stages, but before becoming a high-level wind user, she would not have much combat power. She advises her that as a girl, she should be able to protect herself, so she tells her to consider the earth element, which is the strongest in defense among the 4 elements. But Isabella complains, saying the earth magic robe is too ugly for her. Blair makes fun of her in his mind after hearing her response. She then pulls his ear again. Blair shouts, asking why she's grabbing his ear again despite not saying anything yet. She responds, saying she knows he made fun of her in his mind. Brittany then asks him what department he's going to specialize in. He thinks for a bit before gracefully answering that he wants to choose all of the departments. Isabella laughs at him for dreaming of such a thing that even Miss Brittany couldn't achieve. Brittany then notices something. She says that Blair's words might not be a pointless dream. Isabella tells her he was just talking nonsense, so why is she taking him so seriously? Brittany explains that the magic elements around him give people a strange feeling, but she feels a dense energy. She thinks he might be able to have an affinity with all 4 of the elements at the same time. Brittany then states they should forget about all that stuff for now. She will guide him in his magic since he guided her in math. The 2 students are overjoyed due to her words, though Brittany also states they can't rely too much on magic to be a good magician. Although the gods have given them the ability to cast magic, magic spells and gestures exist which can leave the magician with no opportunity to cast. In order to make up for such a shortcoming, they need to practice martial arts to deal with situations where they have no time to cast magic. She demonstrates her magic by cleaning the dishes, which impresses Blair with its convenience. Brittany also informs them there are many cases where fighting ability is more important than magic, so she will teach them about fighting before magic, which surprises Blair after learning she can also fight. Isabella tells her she learned martial arts at home, so she asks her to let her and Blair try it first so he can have an intuitive understanding of combat. Brittany agrees and reminds her not to hurt Blair. Isabella replies, saying she will show him mercy, all secretly thinking she won't lose to him in martial arts. Blair then gets a bit nervous seeing her prepare herself. They head to a training room after they get ready. Isabella taunts him, saying he shouldn't let her make him cry. Then she swiftly dashes to attack him, but he remains calm. She reaches him and throws a punch, but he manages to skillfully dodge her attack. In the dead of night inside the training room, the 2 fight continuously as they swiftly move across the room. Blair then grabs her wrists, causing her to lose her balance. He then manages to incapacitate her in one swift motion. She's stuck in a revealing position, so she calls him a pervert and orders him to let go. He tells her that for him to let her go, she still has to do something, but she suddenly launches a kick straight to his face. Though the sneak attack is not successful, he managed to dodge it. Blair then swiftly attacks her with wind magic, causing her to lose her footing. She loses her balance again and falls to the ground. She screams in panic at her impending fall, but surprisingly, she doesn't fall to the ground since Blair managed to catch her in the nick of time by grabbing onto her hips. Brittany interrupts their moment by asking Blair something. She asks where Blair learned martial arts. He states, while still holding Isabella, that he didn't study it formally but was interested in fighting, so he practiced Sanda for a while in his hometown. She then asks what it is. She also asks about his hometown since he has mentioned it multiple times. As he struggles to answer her question, Isabella reaches for his ears once again and pulls on them after he still doesn't let go. He finally lets her down. She pouts while saying the only reason she lost this time was due to her slipping on the ground. Brittany is intrigued by his martial arts and asks him to try it on her. He states that Sanda is very difficult to control, seeing that he almost hit Isabella, but Brittany assures him he shouldn't worry about it. Blair decides to do what she says and reminds her to be careful as he readies his fists. He then lunges straight at Miss Brittany, but she sees his attack coming and puts up her guard. He sees her chest bouncing, which causes him to remember what his Sanda coach once said, that when fighting against a real master, he will not have time to understand what happened to him. He didn't believe it at the time, but this time he was sure of it after she strikes his neck, causing him to lose consciousness. Brittany catches him to prevent him from falling and sets him down gently on the floor. Isabella panics and asks her what happened to Blair and if he is all right. Brittany tells her she truly does care about him and informs her he only lost consciousness for a while and will wake up later. Isabella becomes flustered after what she just said and tries to deny it. But Brittany tells her she knows she likes Blair, which warrants a surprised reaction from Isabella. She desperately tries to deny liking such a pervert and asks her to stop spouting such nonsense. Brittany tells her she shouldn't deny it since she doesn't see it as a wrong thing to do. She tells her that she too is the same as her. But something suddenly interrupts both of them. It's Blair, who is groping Brittany unconsciously, which causes Isabella to become shocked. She becomes surprised, thinking he was awake all along, but he is only starting to wake up. The next day, Blair is covered with bandages and complains that it hurts. Toby asks him what's up if last night was so intense that he got hurt sleeping at Miss Brittany's house. But he makes an excuse, saying he accidentally fell. In truth, it's due to a violent woman who suddenly pinned him to the ground right after he woke up after mistakenly thinking he groped Miss Brittany on purpose. He tells her to stop since his hand is about to break, while Brittany weakly asks her to let go. But in the end, she ended up breaking his hand due to her extreme strength. He also realized that Brittany had such strong fighting skills and deduced she must have received formal combat training for a long time, since in this world, a normal family wouldn't have the right conditions to receive combat training from an early age, let alone magic and mathematics. He truly wonders where she came from. Suddenly, Toby interrupts his train of thought, saying he has finally mastered the trick of summoning 2 fireballs that Blair taught him. Blair is surprised to see he mastered it so fast, so Toby volunteers to show him what he can do. He then starts to cast the spell and charges up his flame energy from within. Blair becomes excited to see what he can do. Toby then finishes casting and activates the fireball. Blair is shocked to see what he can do, not because it was impressive, but due to the fact it's disappointing. He shows him once again the little flames he managed to muster with all his strength. Looking at the 2 tiny flames he made, Blair comforts him by saying his magical power is indeed higher than what it used to be. He hides the fact he was disappointed by his techniques, so he doesn't say anything more. Suddenly, a cake appears in front of him. It's being given by Alice, who recently heard he was injured, so she brought a cake for him to eat. She guesses he didn't bring any lunch today, which is the reason she also brought the cake. Alice then scares away Toby, saying he must have eaten already, so he leaves Blair and tells him to eat and that he has some work he should be doing. Blair is entranced by the food. He tries to refuse, saying he feels indebted for always eating her food. Alice asks if the cake is tasty. Blair responds, saying Alice's bread is the best, and he also asks if she has had lunch already. Though Alice ignores his question and asks one instead, Blair agrees to answer. She asks if he likes Isabella, causing him to spit out his cake in shock. He asks her why she's suddenly asking such a question. She suspects someone already asked the question to him. She then eagerly waits for his answer. But Blair calmly answers her question while wiping his face, saying he only wants to study magic right now. Alice says he has such a ruthless answer, but also tells him it's fine, which makes Blair question what she meant. She doesn't reply, but instead kisses him on the cheek. He becomes confused at what she did, so he questions her about what she wanted to do. But she only replies, saying she will come to play with him again in the future. His classmates see the scene just now and think of him now as a senior killer, seeing he managed to bewitch both Alice and Isabella. The next day, Blair heads to the library outside the academy while thinking of what Alice said earlier. But he decides to stop thinking about it and instead thinks about the books on the 4th floor, which have mostly already been read by him. He stretches his arms after reading so many books in the library and finally thinks it's time to go to the 2nd floor since he heard there are higher level magic books in that place. He heads to the counter where a purple-haired woman resides. The woman looks unfriendly as she is reading a book. Blair approaches her and asks how he can get to the second floor of the library as he hands his identification to her. She reads that it's only apprentice level, so she informs him he needs to be a junior magician in order to go to the second floor. He replies, saying he can't pass the certification yet, and asks for another way. She says it can't be helped, and that with his magic level, he can't even understand such books. Blair is a bit triggered after hearing her response. But suddenly someone calls out to him with his alias. It is Jasmine, who offers her help to him. The woman leaves after seeing Jasmine knows him. He informs her of his circumstances, then asks her to persuade him. Jasmine reiterates that he needs to be a junior magician, or else he needs to complete a certification for a new magic in order to go to the second floor. But the possibility of him succeeding is too small, so she asks him to improve his mental power instead to become a junior magician. But Blair agrees to complete the certification since he states he just so happens to have a new idea about improving the water element magic. She warns him that if he fails the certification, then the association will blacklist him, which will make him unable to use their resources. But he assures her it would be just fine. Jasmine still looks visibly worried despite his assurance, but she still agrees to let him try and leads him into the certification exam. Jasmine talks to the ones who are going to assess Blair, and they become shocked after hearing that a magic apprentice wants to certify water element improvement magic. The bald man next to her states it must be another person looking to deceive the association since so many generations have already perfected the water element. The man in blue asks her to tell Blair he should reconsider since he runs the risk of being blacklisted and penalized by the association. Jasmine tells them she understands but still believes they should give him a chance to try. They finally agree to authenticate him and ask her to let him in the room. Blair enters and secures his mask in place so as not to let it fall. He goes to greet the two. They don't seem to be paying attention to him, but the bald man hears him introduce his name, causing him to remember who he is. Blair states he has come to certify water element improvement magic, which could greatly increase the power of the water element. The bald man stares at him and yells at him, asking why he is here again after damaging the rune last time. He then convinces the man in blue to move to the test room after remembering what he did previously. But the man in blue is stubborn and calls him a coward for being afraid of a simple magic apprentice. He even orders Blair to hit him with the magic, so he immediately obliges. Blair starts to gather the energy from the air surrounding him. He then absorbs it through his whole body, which causes his eyes to resemble ice and flames. Afterward, he activates two elements from the palms of his hands. The man in blue is shocked to see he is a dual caster and talks to the bald man about why he didn't say so. But he ignores him and casts a spell to defend himself. Blair then combines both ice and fire in his hands, resulting in both water and steam coming out of the ice, which propels the flame at an immense speed. The bald man panics and tries to defend himself, thinking it has happened again. Blair's magic is so powerful that it engulfs the room in a bright light that resembles the sun. Our video ends here. To ensure you don't miss the next part, activate the notification bell and see you next time.